welcome. It's good to have you all here. Just ask that those that are standing in the back that haven't taken their seats, perhaps you can do so now. We're going to get our evening underway. Anyway, welcome to all of you. Really, really good to have you here with us tonight. My name is Pat Philpott. I am a broadcast journalist with CBC Radio Canada, the National Radio Newsroom. But I'm also a member of Community Mennonite Church, which actually meets here in this auditorium at Parkview. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for our evening together. In a few minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the evening, what we can expect, and some of the process. But first of all, I just want to let you know that this is an evening that's been is sponsored by the Stouffville Ministerial Association, an association of 22 different churches and parishes within the community of Church Stouffville. And I'd like to introduce to you at this stage Reverend Peter Pallant to bring a word of greeting. Ask him to bring a word of greeting. Peter is the senior pastor of Bloomington Gospel Church. He's also the executive president of the Stouffville Ministerial Association.
Thank you and good evening. It's my privilege to welcome you on behalf of the Stouffville Ministerial Association. It's my privilege also to thank the candidates for coming and receiving the greetings and invitation to come. I'd also like to mention that this evening would not be possible without the inspiration and dedication of a very hard-working committee. So I want to thank the committee. They actually came to the ministerial with the idea and asked that it would be something that we would agree with and support, and we said, by all means, this is a great idea. So we want to thank Arnold Neufeld-Fast and Winston Miller, Alan Reeser McDowell, and Renee DeVries for their very hard work for this evening. I think it would be appropriate to I've also been asked to open our time together in prayer. So if you would bow your heads with me. Our God and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening and for this opportunity and privilege of being able to come together and listen, to consider the words of those candidating for election in our riding. We would like to thank you for our nation and the freedom we have to worship you. We thank you for Canada, for its beauty, for its freedom, for its democracy. We recognize that you are sovereign and that this dominion is ultimately in your hands. So, Father, tonight we would ask that you would give wisdom and clarity to each of the candidates tonight as they present, that you would give us discernment and insight. And finally, I would ask that you would mediate in all of our hearts and minds to bring a spirit of peace and truth. And in all things, we ask, Father, that you would be glorified and honored in all said and done tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Peter. I'd also like to welcome those that are with us but not physically present in the room. Courtesy of Stouffville Connects, this event is being live streamed to the internet. Bristol Radio is also recording the evening for a broadcast at a later date, I understand. So welcome to those that are listening in other locations. And we thank those organizations for making that possible. A little bit about tonight's event. It's not really like all candidates' meetings that you may have attended, either this election or other elections. Tonight is not a debate. The organizers have asked me to stress that tonight is an informational forum. The focus of tonight will be on information related to issues which are of particular importance to the churches. Issues perhaps that don't come up in the mainstream media or party literature. But it's not to say that they're religious in nature. It's really issues of current public concern to all of our society, but the ministerial and the members of the churches feel that perhaps our opinions on these issues are informed in a particular way because of the community of faith in which we reside and the faith values that which we hold. Having said that, it's not necessary that anyone be a member of a community of faith to be present tonight. So the welcome is to all. We're glad that you are here. We also want to emphasize that this, because it's really an event focused on information. We asked that there would be just that air of mutual respect between all of us, between the candidates, between me and them, and me and you, and you and them. That would really allow for that information. So, and last, one of the guidelines I've been over with the candidates is just respecting each other's time and their rights to communicate that information to you. There won't be that, those interjections and those rebuttals. The time will be respected by each candidate. A little bit about how we are going to flow out this evening. Our time is, there's a lot packed into it. Our goal, I should start with the end in mind, our goal is to conclude by 9:45, and we're all anxious to get to bed early so you can get up and watch the royal wedding coverage that begins at 2 a.m. on CBC. I won't go into all the platforms that we have to plug down in the newsroom. But our goal is to shoot for that. So that's one of the reasons we want to push on to respect the time. There are 4 sections. The first section is going to be the candidates answering a specific question, which I will give to you in a little while, that lets you learn a little bit more about them and their motivation for public life. The second section will be a little bit longer. There are 8 questions that have been formulated by the organizing committee in relationship with the churches, with the ministerial. And they've gone through a number of drafts. I think there are 5 drafts, and they've been refined. So it's really trying to focus on the issues that are of importance to the churches. The candidates have received those in advance and had a chance to formulate their time, and they'll each be given a defined period of time in which to respond. And so that information will flow. After that time, there will be a break. Not too long. It will take about 10 minutes. And the second session, we're going to take questions from you. There's a table at the back where there are 3 members associated with the ministerial or the organizing committee that will take your written questions, and they'll sort of pull them together so that like questions can be grouped together on a question, and they'll rephrase them for clarity and whatnot. But the purpose of that question is not so much to focus on the policy position of the parties. That's going to happen in the first section. It's going to focus more on the candidates themselves and what they can bring to the role as member of Parliament for this constituency. So we'd ask, as you phrase the questions, if you could keep in mind that that's the focus. Let me give you an example of the kind of question that could be there so that you get a sense. It could be something like, what global issues are the biggest priority for you, and how do you plan to draw attention to them within your caucus? Or there was another question, something that talks about what parliamentary committee would best utilize your gifts, your abilities, your experiences. So those are the kind of things that I ask you to keep in mind when you articulate those questions, that focus on what these men and women bring to the role. And then following that, there'll be a closing session for the candidates in which they each have 2 minutes to say whatever they would like. It's quite wide open. So let me begin first by introducing our candidates. They're seated for you, left to right, in alphabetical order. And on my extreme right, your left, is Paul Calandra with the Conservative Party of Canada. Followed next by Janice Hagan with the New Democratic Party of Canada. Third in is Tryfon Heitus, the Green Party of Canada. Next is John Siciliano of the Progressive Canadian Party. Immediately to my right is Louis Temolkovsky of the Liberal Party of Canada. Would you join me in welcoming our candidates? So in order for them to get a sense of who you are, we've asked each of them to take 90 seconds, and we'll begin over Paul and work our way across the table this way to respond to this question. Who was the greatest influence in your decision to consider public service, and why? Paul.
Well, thank you. Obviously, initially, the biggest influence on me would be my parents. My mom and dad came to Canada in the late 1950s, early 1960s. My mom was 18. My dad was 26 when he came. I know how hard they worked. They struggled very, 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 very hard to make a better life for us here. They came with not a lot and built something very, very special. My father passed away when I was 13, and I was able to see how hard it was for my mother, and how the decisions of government impacted kids growing up. And of course, the timing was really a result of my own life. I have 2 young girls, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old right now, starting out a new family 2 years ago, and I thought the time was right for me to get involved, to participate in helping make my community, my country, and the province the best place in the world in which to live, to work, and to raise a family. And with your help, I was able to be elected 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for the opportunity that you've given me to represent you in Ottawa. I can tell you that there's not a day that goes by that I haven't been grateful for the opportunity that you've given me. And of course, I do hope that I'll have the opportunity to continue to serve you in Ottawa. Thank you.
Janice.
Hi, I've also had many great influences in my life. My father was a World War II veteran from England. He was a war grad. He came here when his sister married a Canadian soldier. And my mother's a farmer, so I always say I'm a farmer's daughter, but don't mess with me because my dad's a sailor. But, they taught me a lot, but I want to share with you someone who I found really inspiring. And right after I heard her speak, I ran for president of my local union, which is really where I started getting involved politically and serving people's needs. So a young woman, I don't even remember her name, she was from Africa, she was a worker, she worked with children dying of AIDS. And she was like maybe 5 years older than me at the time, and she said there are 3 things you need to do, or you need to have if you want to fight for social justice. The first one is you have to be in it for the long run. You know, there are no quick gains. So if you're just here for a couple of weeks, don't bother us. The second one was celebrate every inch of victory. Have a parade. Don't wait for the mile. And the third one was have a good sense of humor, because you needed to be able to stay in the game. And I thought if someone like her who does the work she does, you know, can have a sense of humor, then it's okay for the rest of us. And those are sort of the thing I have kept in my heart, you know, for the last 20 years as a union activist, as a mother, and as a person in this community trying to help for social justice.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for attending today. It is through your strength that I'm able to be here today, and I thank you for that. One of the greatest influences that I've had is definitely my parents, my mother in particular. She's always been by my side and has also given me the strength to carry on. Other than my parents, the greatest influence in my life was my spiritual leader, the leader of the Orthodox Christian faith, His Eminence and His Grace Bartholomew. He's also known as the Green Patriarch around the world. His message of keeping in mind the environment and how important the lessons of Genesis were, where we ought to be better stewards of our environment so as to have our health and welfare taken care of, was one of the messages that really struck home. I had the pleasure of meeting him in Constantinople. Many of you would know it as Istanbul today. I had gone on a pilgrimage to St. Sophia, Hagia Sophia. It was a cathedral that was built back in the days of Emperor Constantine. And I was able to go there to pray, and that's where I've met him. And ever since, he's given me a path to follow, and my feet are firmly on that path, and I continue to follow it, and hopefully build our community.
Thank you. John.
Hi. The reason why I actually joined in this election was to actually help inspire youth to actually go and vote. I believe firmly that the way to build a stronger democracy is to ensure that we actually get people out to vote. I've always felt that the best way to inspire youth is to also speak about issues that are important to them. And the person that actually inspired me was Joe Clark. I actually feel the reason why we actually need to have statesmen like people like him is to ensure that we actually build a much better democracy. I picked the Progressive Canadian Party because that party believes a lot in parliamentary democracy, and to also ensure that parties, instead of bickering, work together. So I'm actually a student who wants to make sure that we actually get the country we need by inspiring people, and that's the kind of person I'm going to be. I want to help build a stronger community and help build a stronger country by mobilizing and helping to bring people together. The same person I'll be the same person I am now is the same person I'll be in Parliament, and I actually hope that you'll actually choose somebody who's actually going to represent the community, and I think it's better to go past party labels and not have somebody who will actually be just like to actually tell what their party wants.
My name is Louis Demokowski. I came to Canada when I was 13 years old. I didn't speak a word of English. We came in 1968 with my mom and my brother. My dad had come to Canada the year before via Australia. He was in Australia for 3 years. I learned to speak English here. I learned to speak some French, and I learned to speak Italian in Canada at university. I studied philosophy at McMaster University, and then I worked for London Life Insurance Company for 20 years, after which time I decided to run for public office. Now, my mom was always supporting me and encouraging me to work in the community, but my dad was always hesitant. He was always saying to me, don't want to be involved in politics. It's a tough game. It's not for people like you maybe. So I was encouraged mainly by many other liberals because I volunteered for the Liberal Party for over 30 years, and I saw other members of Parliament, and I said if they could do it, I could do it, and I want to give back to Canada, so I'm doing it for that. Thank you.
Thank you all. So I'd like to move on to a main section here where we're going to address some of these questions that have come from the ministerial and from the churches. We've allotted about 75 minutes to this. So I just want to say we want it to be a fairly informal tone. If you're finding it's difficult to sit for a long time, you need to go to the washroom, just feel very free to go out to the washrooms here. A little more privacy, there's some just around to the right to go out. And so just, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you can just stand and stretch, and that applies to you folks as well. There is a lot that we want to accomplish, but it's a lot of good stuff. The questions have gone through a number of drafts, and each question, there's a bit of a preamble that I will read that will set a bit of the context for you. And I'm going to ask them questions in random order, and the responses will also come in random order. Random is determined by me. But just to share those that go first and second and so forth. So let's begin. The first one is on the topic of the family. And here is the preamble. And I will ask Paul if you will respond first, followed by Louis, and then the others I will mention at the time. We believe that God has established families to provide physical, emotional, and spiritual care for their members. Today, Canadian families are increasingly under stress, and family breakdown is common. In Ontario, for example, one person is divorced or separated for every 5 people legally married. Stresses are many, and may include low-paid work and financial insecurity, need to care both for dependent children, elderly parents, and the way to reunite and integrate family and other such stories. Here's your question. What particular policy will you propose to reduce the stress on families and promote the integrity of the family? All that to begin.
Thank you. First, in our platform, one of the initial platform items that we brought forward was income facility for families. We allow income facility for seniors. We around the investigation, you can see that the difficulty that many families have is trying to make a decision on whether they want a spouse stay at home for children or not. Tax system currently disadvantages families to make that decision. So what we really do is about the budget balance. We will allow for income facility for families who want to make their own choices. So up to $50,000 of the income can be split between two spouses so that you can make your own choice. We, of course, also have brought in a number of tax changes to support
Number one, we have early childhood learning program that will open up childcare spaces that are affordable within Canada. We will spend $1 billion or invest $1 billion in that program. Secondly, we have support for college and university students. We'll provide them with $4,000 each to go to university because we believe strongly that the more education our children will receive, the better citizens they will become. The third part of the program is to have elder care, allowing children and grandchildren to look after their parents and grandparents, to take up to 6 months off of work and be able to look after their aging parents. The fourth part is about public pension programs. We want to enhance the publicly funded pensions and to increase the guaranteed income supplement. And the fifth part of our program is to have tax credits for renovating your home so you will use less energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice.
The NDP wants to put families first, to bring the resources of the federal government back towards families instead of banks, large corporations, and oil companies. That's the way we've been talking for the last 100 years. Some of the things we want to do is to create a family care benefit for people who are caring for an elderly or disabled member of their family in their home to help with the kinds of things families need. We're also looking at making home care part of the Canada Health Act. So something you can count on, like you do a family doctor or an x-ray. When my father was very ill and before he died, it was very difficult for my mother and for the rest of the family to take care of him. It was a 24-hour job, and people, it got to the point where my mother was getting ill, and we were afraid for her health as well. So you need to have some support. Luckily, we have a big family, but some people don't have that advantage, and you need the support of having people come in and help out. We also want to reduce tuition and put more grants into helping kids from Aboriginal communities and lower income families get to school. And we would reduce credit card interest, which is a huge burden on the poor, and make loans and credit cards a lot more above the table and easier to understand so that poor people don't fall victim.
Great, thank you. John.
Thanks for the question. And what our party wants to do is to actually make sure that all the essential programs are there. So what we would actually do is, if we actually have like a member of the House of Commons, is to ensure that healthcare and education are there for when people actually need it. And what our party would actually do is also, we would stress that the federal government should actually make sure that post-secondary education is something that should actually be there for all Canadians. One of the main things that our party stressed is that the federal government today has actually been concentrating more on big business instead of the average person. We actually think is great. You actually have to refocus on the areas that will actually help the middle class, and they're actually also being squeezed right now. So we actually think the federal government today should actually do is to actually make sure that the support programs are there for the disadvantaged of the poor, while at the same time maintaining a strong economy. So what we actually do is pressure that the essential programs like pensions when you need it, post-secondary education for everybody should actually be there, and also making sure that the poor are protected. So that's what our party would actually be for, which is the essential programs, while at the same time making sure taxes are low. That's what our party supports. Thank you.
Good, thank you, John. And Trevor, please.
The Green Party and I believe that our community deserves a little more respect than what it's getting presently. We've been taxed to death, and we need to find ways to alleviate that tax burden, because we find ourselves not having any quality time with our family. And the reason we work is so that we can have a good lifestyle. One of the things that we propose to do is people earning an average of $20,000 or less ought not to be taxed. so that they can contribute more to communities and so that they can not get discouraged from going out into the workforce. We believe that they need assistance. We also believe that our elderly are being overcharged by the big pharma companies. We would like to set up a crown corporation that does all the buying when it comes to our pharmaceuticals so that we have a lower cost and in turn we can strengthen the health and welfare of our community and our families. We strongly believe that the healthcare system, which thanks to Tommy Douglas, was brought into to fruition the way it is today as a universal healthcare system. We wish to strengthen that and uphold the integrity of that, and we will do everything possible for our community to do so.
Thank you very much. The second question comes under the heading of climate justice. I'll read the preamble in a moment, but just Janice, I'll ask you to respond on first, and Tripp in second, and then we'll go from there. Here's the preamble. The churches believe that humans are called to be stewards of God's good creation. Our town has lived through two significant environmental crises. Because of the unregulated forestry in Ridges Township in the 1800s, by 1910, only 7% of forests remained standing. As a result, land suffered from soil erosion, desertification, and cycles of flash spring floods and summer droughts, and the town's main industry collapsed. Today, we have the thriving Vivian Forest because of the Reforestation Act of 1911. In the 1960s and 70s, our town became Toronto's dump site for liquid industrial and solid waste. Young mothers noticed that the town's miscarriage and birth defect rate was much higher than the provincial average. With little oversight, the well-being of families in our town was shaken. Today, many of us are concerned when plans for growth, wealth, and consumption are not sustainable and come at the cost of environmental destruction and increased human suffering, locally, nationally, and globally. Our churches are recovering the important biblical mandate of creation care. Here's the question. What would you and your party do to show leadership in environmental stewardship so that we can bequeath a sustainable and healthy environment to future generations locally and globally? Janice, please.
I've always been an environmentalist, but 2 years ago I went back into school and did my master's degree in environmental studies so I could know what I was talking about a little bit, because it's a very complex issue. The first thing we would do locally is look at food security. I mean, you may not know this, but if the trucks stop moving, Toronto's got 48 hours of food. We need to buy locally, and as the cost of gas keeps going up, this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue, not just for our health, because, green vegetables right off the field are the best thing for you, but, we can't afford it anymore. So we need to preserve the agricultural land around here, and we need to do a lot of innovation and use science and use the long memory of farmers and work with everyone to try and create sustainable agriculture that'll be good for many generations. I'm a little bit concerned about business where people think we don't have a lot of time left, so who cares, let's just take all we can get now. We really need to do, as the Indigenous people say, think about the seventh generation in every decision we make. I grew up swimming in Lake Erie as a child. By the time I was a teenager, I couldn't put my feet in it. It was disgusting. And now I've swum in it with my own children. We can clean things up. That was a lot of government money and science. We can fix things. We need to start now.
Thank you. Tripp, please.
As you know, not much has been spoken about when it comes to climate change. And it's shameful, actually, that we haven't heard as much as we ought to. Because it is a crisis that we will be facing in our own time, and it's a crisis that our children will face point blank if we don't do anything about it right now. If you allow me to read what the Green Party of Canada recognizes, we recognize that climate change is one of the largest environmental, economic, and humanitarian challenges that we face today. We believe that Canada must take the lead in global negotiations, and we will do so by adopting the following targets. reduce Canadian emissions by 30% below 1990 levels by 2020, and to 85% reduction by 1990 by 2040, regardless of what other countries do. Push for global reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that are required to achieve a target of 350 ppm to cap the maximum global temperature increase at 1.5 degrees. Adopt a far more aggressive emissions reductions, which would be required if other industrialized countries also participate. Periodically reassess these targets in light of emergent scientific evidence to adopt more aggressive targets if needed, and push for an international system of periodic review, reassessment, and target renewal.
Thank you, John.
All right, thanks for the question. And what we actually think is there's actually been a lack of leadership in the environmental area, and if you actually like to be in the House of Commons, I would actually pressure the government of the day to actually make sure that we do, leadership in this vital area, because future generations will actually wonder where were we at this time, especially since we actually have like a lack of a lack of leadership. But what I actually think is that we actually need to implement, the foundations of the system like right now. So what I actually think we should be doing is to ensure that all homes become more energy efficient. And locally, what we can actually do is actually make sure that we have more rapid transit, like in the riding, to ensure that we have like a north-south direction for GO trains. And another important thing that we could actually do right now is to make sure that we actually link this riding by bus, because we actually have to make sure, we in this riding actually spend about 32 days of the year actually traveling, waiting to actually go to work. But what we actually need to do is to actually build these links to link the community and to ensure that we don't wait as long, when we actually go to work. So what we actually need to have is like a person in this riding will actually have the leadership there to actually make sure that the government does the right thing and actually proceeds on the environment file. That's what I would do if I was actually the person who represented this community. We need somebody who actually cares about the environment and for issues that are very, critical to the young teen people. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
We need to think globally and act locally. And what I mean by that is I've planted trees in the Rouge River, Rouge Park, for over 25 years, just down the street from Stouffville. I support the Rouge National Park. I grew up in a village in Macedonia where we grew everything that we ate. Everything except we got salt and some oil. Even oil, sometimes we use the fat. So we know how to deal with environmental issues. You must use everything that you have in your possession. If you have real X signs, you use them. and then you listen to the people, and you make some decision, and then you bring back.
For the ages of manufacturers have discovered stickers. What we've done is quite a bit, actually. We've brought in, one of the first things we did in 2007 was brought in a $250 million program where the federal government would invest in securing as many of the important natural heritage sites that we have across Ontario. That was in partnership with the Nature Conservancy of Canada and Ducks Unlimited. It started with the first investment of the Happy Valley Forest in King Township. Through the Economic Action Plan, we've been investing in a lot of community centers across this riding, upgrading their facilities so that they use less energy. It was one of the pillars of the Economic Action Plan. We invested $1.5 billion in transit, $300 million in New York Region transit initiatives. We brought in a chemical management plan, a $250 million chemical management plan that would secure chemicals so that we didn't have the tragedy of what happened in Stouffville and in Ballantrae. We, of course, my family, of course, was one of the first to donate an easement in favor of the Oak Ridge Moraine Land Trust, securing 60 acres of land. But we also have to do another thing. We have to make sure that Class 1 farmland is protected for our farmers so that they can continue to farm the land that they have done for generations. We can all support a Rouge Park, but not at the expense of the generations of farmers who have built this community. And we have a choice. We can say yes to a national park, but we can also say yes to the farmers who built this community. And as your member, that's what I'll do.
All right, thank you. The third question is under the heading Addressing Poverty Globally.